She went from being a struggling sketch comedy performer to a Hollywood legend, but it wasn't because she got lucky. It was because she made one radical choice. She walked away from success. In 1984, at the height of her fame on SCTV, Catherine O'Hara left the show. Everyone thought she was crazy. But that decision led to everything that came next. She appeared in blockbuster films that grossed over $4 billion worldwide. She worked with Martin Scorsese and Tim Burton. She won Emmys, Golden Globes, and Screen Actors Guild Awards. But her greatest role came when she was 60 years old, playing a pretentious soap star named Moira Rose on a little Canadian sitcom that almost nobody believed in. That role changed everything. And on January 30th, 2026, when Catherine O'Hara passed away at 71, the entertainment world lost one of its greatest treasures. This is the story of how Catherine O'Hara became the quiet genius who defined an era of comedy and inspired generations of performers. This is her story. Chapter 1. The Beginning, Toronto, 1954. Catherine Ann O'Hara was born on March 4th, 1954, in Toronto, Canada. She arrived as the sixth of 7 children in a Catholic family of Irish descent, growing up in the Toronto suburb of Etobicoke. To understand Catherine, you have to understand that she was surrounded by siblings from day one. This wasn't a quiet household. This was a home filled with noise, laughter, chaos, and a particular Canadian sense of humor, dry, observational, and rooted in the everyday absurdities of life. From an early age, Catherine discovered something that would define her entire career: the power of impersonation. While other kids copied their heroes, Catherine copied everyone: her parents, her siblings, people on the street. She would morph into different characters to make her family laugh. This wasn't a learned skill. It was something primal, instinctive. And as any great comedian will tell you, the ability to see the ridiculous in the ordinary and translate it into performance is a gift you're reborn with, not something you learn. Her sister, Mary Margaret, would go on to become a singer-songwriter, showing that the O'Hara family had creativity flowing through their veins like oxygen. But while Mary Margaret pursued music, Catherine pursued the stage. She attended Burton Collegiate Institute, graduating in 1974. Her high school classmate, future comedian Robin Dube, was on a similar trajectory. As if Toronto was already creating a comedy factory in the late 1970s. But after graduation, Catherine didn't rush to stardom. Instead, she took a job at the Second City Theatre in Toronto, waitressing tables and watching the magic happen around her. This was the crucial moment in Catherine's life. Second City wasn't just a comedy venue, it was a breeding ground for some of the greatest comedians and performers Canada would ever produce. It was where you learned comedy by osmosis, by watching, by participating in the ecosystem of humor and improvisation. Catherine watched the stage night after night, serving drinks, observing genius at work. Then came her break. She was offered the chance to become the understudy for Gilda Radner, one of the most talented comedians of her generation. Gilda Radner wasn't just funny, she was a force of nature, someone who could command a stage with vulnerability and precision. Catherine had a front row seat to greatness. And when Gilda left in 1974 to pursue television opportunities, eventually Saturday Night Live, Catherine stepped into her shoes as a regular cast member. This was 1974. She was 20 years old. Most people at that age are still figuring out who they are. Catherine had already found her calling. Chapter 2. SCTV. The Golden Era of Canadian Comedy. In 1976, the Second City Theatre troupe created something revolutionary. Second City Television, SCTV, was a sketch comedy show that took the improvisational spirit of the stage and transformed it for television. If Second City was the university, SCTV was where the finest minds in comedy graduated. Catherine O'Hara wasn't just a cast member. She was part of a pantheon of performers that included John Candy, Eugene Levy, Martin Short, Dave Thomas, Joe Flaherty, Rick Moranis, and Andrea Martin. If you're reading those names and thinking these are all comedy legends, you're right. SCTV wasn't just a show, it was a supernova of talent that burned so brightly, it still defines comedy decades later. The show began broadcasting locally in southern Ontario in the fall of 1976. It was quirky. It was Canadian. It was completely different from the American sketch comedy landscape. But it found an audience. As it gradually built a national following, and then an international following through syndication, people started to pay attention. Catherine's work on SCTV became a masterclass in character comedy. On the show, she created dozens of characters, many of them impersonations. She became Lucille Ball with an almost haunting accuracy. She was Tammy Faye Bakker with an understanding of desperation and despair beneath the makeup. She was Katharine Hepburn, Gilda Radner, Brooke Shields. Each impersonation wasn't just an impression. It was a commentary on fame, vanity, and the human condition. One of her most famous characters was Lola Heatherton, a vacuous nightclub singer that somehow captured everything about a certain kind of performer. The one who thinks they're more talented than they are, the one whose desperation for love and attention is so transparent it becomes tragic. Katharine played Lola with a mixture of absurdity and genuine pathos that made you laugh while simultaneously feeling a little sorry for her. The brilliance of Katharine's comedy wasn't that she was just making fun of these people. She was finding the humanity in them. She was sympathetic to their delusions. And that's what made her comedy transcendent. She never punched down. Even when she was playing characters who were ridiculous or pathetic, she played them with dignity and an underlying kindness. Beyond performing, Katharine was also a writer on the show. This is crucial. She wasn't just an interpreter of other people's material, she was creating it. She co-wrote sketches with her fellow cast members, particularly with Andrea Martin. And in 1982, she won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a variety series for her work on SCTV. She received 2 more Emmy nominations for her writing contributions. This was Katharine proving that her talents extended beyond performance into the creative process itself. SCTV continued through the 1970s and early 1980s, becoming a cultural institution. The show took a break from 1980 to 1981, and during this time, Katharine did something unexpected. She joined Saturday Night Live as a cast member for one brief stint in 1981, while the show was being retooled. She didn't stay long, but she proved she could hang with the biggest names in American comedy. She returned to SCTV for its pickup by NBC in 1981, when it became known as SCTV Network 90. The American television industry had finally caught on. The show ran until 1984, with Katharine as a constant, evolving presence. She wasn't the flashiest cast member. She didn't have John Candy as physical comedy or Martin Short as manic energy. She was quieter, more observational, more subtle. But she was the foundation. She was the intelligence and the heart of the show. In the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s, Katharine also did voiceover work for animated cartoons. This work would continue throughout her entire career, showing her range and her willingness to take every job seriously, whether it was a high-profile film or a voice in an animated special. By the time SCTV ended in 1984, Katharine had already proven herself as one of the finest sketch comedians of her generation. But she was about to make a critical decision that would change everything. "I lost enthusiasm," Katharine told People magazine about why she decided to leave SCTV. "I wanted to learn more about acting. I wanted a personal life." This is a remarkable statement. Here she was, on one of the most successful comedy shows in television history, beloved by critics and audiences at the height of her creative powers. And she walked away, not because she was forced out, not because the show was declining. but because she wanted to grow, to challenge herself, to become a dramatic actress. This is the mark of a true artist, the willingness to leave success behind in pursuit of something greater. Most performers would have ridden SCTV as far as it would take them. Catherine chose to jump into the unknown. Chapter 3. Film career begins. While Catherine was still performing on SCTV, she was already appearing in films. In 1980, she made her feature film debut in Double Negative, a thriller that also starred her SCTV co-stars John Candy, Eugene Levy, and Joe Flaherty. It wasn't a starring role, but it was a beginning. Throughout the 1980s, Catherine began taking on more film roles, often in supporting positions, but roles that challenged her as an actress. She appeared in Martin Scorsese's After Hours in 1985, a surreal, darkly comic film that demanded a particular kind of performance. Catherine played a small role, but she was working with one of the greatest living directors in cinema. This wasn't sketch comedy anymore. This was serious film work. In 1986, she appeared in Heartburn, a romantic comedy drama that showed her capacity for romantic comedy and pathos. She was appearing in films that were getting theatrical releases, that were being reviewed by serious critics, that were part of the broader landscape of cinema. But the role that would introduce Catherine O'Hara to millions of Americans wasn't a leading role. It was a supporting role in a horror comedy that almost nobody expected to become a classic. In 1988, Tim Burton directed Beetlejuice, a film about a recently deceased couple who hire a ghoulish bioexorcist to scare away the new residents of their house. Catherine played Delia Dietz, the stepmother of the main female character. Delia is pretentious, absurd, obsessed with dark art and strange sculptures. She's infuriating and pathetic and funny and somehow deeply human. Beetlejuice became a massive hit. It was a perfect fit for Catherine's comedy sensibility. But something else happened on the set of Beetlejuice that would change her life forever. She met Bio Welch, a production designer and art director working on the film. Bio had worked on numerous Tim Burton films and had a career that spanned decades. They began a relationship that would eventually lead to marriage. This is an important moment in Catherine's story because it represents a shift toward normalcy, toward life outside of the Hollywood grind. While many celebrities struggle to maintain personal relationships, Catherine and Bio built something real and lasting that would sustain them through the decades. Chapter 4. Home Alone, Becoming an American Icon. In 1990, Catherine appeared in multiple films, including Dick Tracy and Betsy's Wedding. But the role that truly defined her in the eyes of American audiences came that same year. Home Alone starred Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister, a young boy left behind when his family accidentally goes on vacation without him. Catherine played Kate McAllister, Kevin's mother, a harried, exasperated, devoted mother. The role wasn't flashy. It wasn't a showpiece for a performer. It was a supporting role in what was essentially a children's film. And yet Catherine made the role unforgettable. Kate McAllister became an archetype of the American mother, frazzled, caring, funny without trying to be inauthentic. Catherine didn't play the role for laughs. She played it for truth. She played Kate as a real person, a real mother, dealing with real problems. And in doing so, she created a character that millions of people instantly recognized and loved. Home Alone became one of the biggest films of 1990. It would become a holiday classic, a film that would be watched by countless families every Christmas for generations. Catherine's performance, while brief, became iconic. When she finally tracked down Kevin and embraced him near the end of the film, it felt real because Catherine made it real. She reprised the role in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York in 1992, where Kate gets lost in New York and has a similar adventure. The film was also a major success, cementing Catherine's position as a beloved Hollywood presence. By this point, Catherine had done something remarkable. She had transitioned from being a sketch comedy legend to a Hollywood actress. She had proven that she could do both, but she was about to discover a different kind of role, one that would become her signature work for the next 2 decades. Chapter 5: The Christopher Guest Collaborations. In 1996, director Christopher Guest released Waiting for Guffman, a mockumentary about a small Missouri town and its community theater group preparing for a centennial celebration musical. It was based on the success of Guest's 1984 film, This Is Spinal Tap, which pioneered the mockumentary format. In Waiting for Guffman, Catherine played Sheila Albertson, a travel agent who, along with her husband Ron, becomes part of the theatrical production. The character allowed Catherine to tap into something that had always been present in her comedy, the ability to find pathos and delusion. Sheila Albertson isn't a bad person. She genuinely believes she's talented and that this show is going to launch her career. The tragedy is that she's completely delusional, but Catherine played her with such sincerity and warmth that Sheila became genuinely sympathetic. Waiting for Guffman reunited Catherine with Eugene Levy, her old friend from SCTV, and it also featured Fred Willard, another comic genius. The film failed to earn significant dollars at the box office, but it became a cult classic on video, beloved by people who appreciated intelligent comedy and character work. This was the beginning of what would become one of cinema's greatest creative partnerships. Christopher Guest and Catherine O'Hara would collaborate on multiple films, and in each one, Catherine would prove her versatility and her commitment to the character. In 2000, Guest released Best in Show, another mockumentary, this time about dog shows. In Best in Show, Catherine played Cookie Guggleman-Fleck, a woman whose extensive romantic history becomes a running joke throughout the film. Cookie has slept with dozens of men. The film implies she has been with nearly every man in the country. She's vacuous, self-absorbed, and completely oblivious to how inappropriate she is. And yet Catherine played Cookie with such unself-conscious confidence that the character became hilarious and oddly endearing. Best in Show featured an ensemble cast that included Eugene Levy, Fred Willard, Parker Posey, and others. It was smarter than most comedies, more layered, more genuine in its observation of human behavior. And Catherine was at the center of much of the humor. In 2003, Guest and O'Hara reunited for A Mighty Wind, a mockumentary about a folk music festival and the assorted musicians and personalities who perform and compete. Catherine played Mitch Cohen's ex-wife, a woman who hadn't performed in decades, but was now attempting a comeback. A Mighty Wind was special for another reason. Catherine was actually called upon to sing. For the song, A Mighty Wind, Catherine delivered a vocal performance that was both funny and genuinely well sung. The film's music was taken seriously, and Catherine rose to the occasion. The A Mighty Wind album was nominated for a Grammy Award, proving that these weren't parody songs, they were legitimate folk songs presented in a comedic context. In 2006, Christopher Guest made For Your Consideration, a mockumentary about an independent film crew making an Oscar bait drama. Catherine played Marilyn Hack, a supporting actress in the fictional film. Once again, she found the humanity and comedy in a delusional character. These 4 films became Catherine's signature work for many critics and serious comedy fans. They showcased her intelligence, her understanding of character, her ability to find humor without relying on punchlines or breaking character. She was doing the kind of sophisticated comedy that requires the audience to pay attention, to understand subtext, to appreciate subtlety. Critics loved her work in these films. She received numerous nominations from critics groups and award organizations. While she didn't always win, she was consistently recognized as one of the finest comedy actors in cinema. Chapter 6: The Voice in the Animated World. In 1993, Tim Burton released The Nightmare Before Christmas, a stop-motion animated film directed by Henry Selick but produced by Burton. The film had a distinctive visual style and a uniquely dark sensibility. Catherine provided the voice of Sally, a ragdoll creation who serves as a mother figure to the main character, Jack Skellington. Sally's role required a particular kind of voice performance, melancholic, gentle, somewhat southern, and filled with unspoken emotion. Catherine delivered a vocal performance that was haunting and beautiful. She sang the song Sally's Song, which became one of the film's most memorable musical moments. For decades, The Nightmare Before Christmas would be watched by new generations of children, and countless people would grow up hearing Catherine's voice as Sally. Beyond this iconic role, Catherine provided voices for numerous animated films throughout her career. In 1999, she provided voices for the animated film Bardock the Magnificent. In 2004, she provided voice work for the animated film Chicken Little. In 2006, she lent her voice to the animated films Monster House and Over the Hedge. Later in her career, she voiced characters in Where the Wild Things Are, Frankenweenie, The Addams Family, Extinct, Elemental, and The Wild Robot. This consistent voice work showed Catherine's range and her willingness to take every job seriously, whether it was a high-profile feature film or voice work that would appear in the background of an animated special. She understood that a voice performance was just as important as a physical performance, and she brought the same level of artistry and commitment to her voice work as she did to her on-screen roles. Chapter 7: The Middle Years Range and Depth. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Catherine appeared in numerous films beyond the Christopher Guest mockumentaries. In 1999, Catherine appeared in The Life Before This, the Canadian film that earned her a Genie Award for Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role. The film showed her capacity for serious dramatic work, proving that she could move beyond comedy when the material demanded it. In 1997, she appeared in Pippi Longstocking. In 1998, she was in Home Fries. In 2001, she was in Speaking of Sex. In 2002, she appeared in Searching for Deborah Winger, a documentary about actresses and aging in Hollywood, a subject that was deeply relevant to Catherine. As a woman in her late 40s, navigating an industry that often discarded older women. In 2004, she appeared with Jim Carrey in Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, a Tim Burton-influenced film about orphan children. Catherine's presence in the film added gravitas and charm to a dark, whimsical story. In 2005, Catherine appeared in Game 6, an independent film about a baseball fan. In 2006, she appeared in Penelope, a fantasy film starring Christina Ricci. She also appeared in The Great Feral, continuing to take on varied roles across different genres and budgets. In 2010, Catherine appeared in the television film Temple Grandin, playing the aunt of Temple Grandin. Her performance in this film earned her 3 award nominations: a Primetime Emmy Award, a Satellite Award, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. The film was a prestige production, and Catherine's presence in it added depth and gravitas. Throughout this entire period, from 1980 to the early 2000s, Catherine had built an extraordinary career. She had appeared in films that had grossed over $4 billion worldwide. She had worked with legendary directors like Martin Scorsese and Tim Burton. She had won awards and received critical recognition. She had established herself as a beloved character actress, known for her intelligence, her warmth, and her ability to find depth in supporting roles. And yet, as extraordinary as all this was, Catherine's greatest work was still ahead of her. Chapter 8: Schitt's Creek, The Renaissance. In 2015, Eugene Levy, Catherine's old friend and collaborator from SCTV, approached her about a new television project. Levy, along with his son Daniel, had created a sitcom about a wealthy family that loses everything and is forced to move to a small town they had purchased years earlier as a joke. The show was called Schitt's Creek. Eugene Levy would play the patriarch, Johnny Rose. He wanted Catherine to play his wife, Moira Rose. Daniel Levy would play their son, David. Annie Murphy would play their daughter, Alexis. Catherine's initial reaction was hesitant. She was in her 60s. Most people assumed her career was winding down. She had done significant work over 5 decades, and while she was still working, she was no longer the young ingenue. The offer of a long-term television commitment seemed daunting. "I'm lazy and stupid," Catherine recalled in later interviews about her initial reluctance. "I really didn't want to do a long-term TV thing." She was also honest about her reasons. She valued her personal life, her family, her marriage to B.O. Welch. That Eugene Levy knew something about Catherine that she didn't fully understand about herself. She was about to enter the most creatively fulfilling period of her entire career. Levy contacted another actress for the role, but was ultimately able to convince Catherine by telling her she was unobligated to commit to the full series if she didn't want to. They would do a pilot presentation, and if it was picked up, she could always leave. This was enough to convince Catherine to take a chance. When the CBC picked up Schitt's Creek to series, Catherine agreed to continue. She would go on to play Moira Rose in 80 episodes of the show, appearing throughout its entire 6-season run from 2015 to 2020. Rose became one of the greatest television characters of the 21st century. Here was a character that seemed on the surface to be a simple caricature of a wealthy, pretentious woman reduced to poverty. But in the hands of Catherine O'Hara, Moira became something far more complex and profound. Moira is a former daytime soap star who was once wealthy and adored. She is obsessed with maintaining her status and sophistication in a small Canadian town that has no interest in her pretensions. She has a unique accent, unplaceable, fluctuating, sometimes bordering on effective. She uses language that nobody uses, words that viewers had to look up in dictionaries. She wore extraordinary wigs, each one reflecting her mood in the particular episode. Her wardrobe, inspired by designer Daphne Guinness, was almost exclusively black and white, elaborate and structured. On the surface, Moira Rose was ridiculous. She was delusional, self-absorbed, incapable of understanding that the world didn't revolve around her. But Catherine played her with such sincerity, such unwavering commitment to the character's logic, that Moira became sympathetic. You understood her. You recognized her longing to be important, her inability to adapt, her fierce love for her family. The genius of Catherine's performance was that she never winked at the camera. She never acknowledged that Moira was ridiculous. She played every moment as if Moira truly believed everything she was saying. Every outfit made perfect sense. Every word choice was exactly right. This absolute commitment to the absurdity is what made the character transcend comedy and become something genuinely moving. Over the 6 seasons of Schitt's Creek, Moira's arc was one of the most beautiful character journeys in television. She began as a woman desperate to escape the small town and return to her former life. But slowly, subtly, Moira began to grow. She made genuine friendships with the townspeople. She joined a singing group called the Jotsagals. She served on the town council. She developed actual care and concern for people around her, not because she was becoming less Moira, but because she was becoming a fuller version of herself. The final season of Schitt's Creek was extraordinary. The Rose family had grown and changed, but especially Moira. In the series finale, there's a moment where you see Moira's vulnerability beneath all her armor, where you understand that her pretension and her dramatics were always a way of protecting herself from disappointment. Catherine's performance in these final episodes was nothing short of masterful. She delivered comedic moments that made you laugh, dramatic moments that made you cry. and moments of genuine human connection that reminded you why she had been so successful for so long. And then the show ended, and Schitt's Creek immediately became one of the most beloved television shows of the 2010s. Critics raved about it. Audiences adored it. New generations discovered Catherine O'Hara through Moira Rose. Chapter 9. Awards and Recognition the Emmy Years. The accolades that followed Schitt's Creek were extraordinary. Catherine won 6 Canadian Screen Awards for Best Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. She won a TCA Award for Individual Achievement in Comedy. Most significantly, she won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series in 2020. This Emmy win was particularly meaningful because it made Catherine a 2-time Emmy winner. Her first Emmy came in 1982 for her writing contributions to SCTV. Her second Emmy, 38 years later, came for her performance as Moira Rose. This trajectory from a young writer winning for her words to an older actress winning for her performance told the story of her entire career. She also won a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Television Series, Musical, or Comedy at Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Actress in a Comedy Series, and a Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Female Actor in a Comedy Series. But perhaps most importantly, Schitt's Creek changed how people perceived Catherine O'Hara. For younger audiences, she wasn't just Kevin's mom from Home Alone. She was Moira Rose. She was one of the greatest actresses of her generation. And the world finally recognized her the way the people who had worked with her for decades already knew her to be, a true genius of her craft. The show's success is often attributed to the Levy family's writing and producing, and deservedly so. But Catherine's performance was the beating heart of the show. Without her commitment, her intelligence, her ability to make an absurd character feel real, Schitt's Creek wouldn't have transcended being a charming Canadian sitcom to become a cultural phenomenon. Chapter 10. Later Work and Continuing Excellence. After Schitt's Creek ended in 2020, Catherine continued working. She was far from retirement. At 65 years old, she was still taking on interesting roles and interesting challenges. In 2017, she appeared in the first season of the Netflix series, A Series of Unfortunate Events, playing Dr. Georgina Orwell, a character from Lemony Snicket's book series. She appeared alongside Neil Patrick Harris in this dark, whimsical adaptation. Over the years, Catherine also guest starred on top-rated television series. She appeared in 6 Feet Under and Curb Your Enthusiasm, proving that she could hold her own with any performer in television. In 2025, just before her death, Catherine had a main role in the Apple TV Plus satirical comedy series, The Studio. Starring alongside Seth Rogen, she also guest starred in the 2nd season of HBO's The Last of Us. Both roles earned her Emmy nominations in 2025, proving that even in her final year of life, Catherine was doing work that was recognized by her peers as exceptional. This final chapter of her career showed that Catherine remained vital, relevant, and continuously challenged by interesting material. She wasn't coasting on past success. She was actively seeking out new roles, new collaborations, and new opportunities to grow as an artist. Chapter 11. Personal Life and Honors. During her later years, Catherine maintained a relatively private personal life. She remained married to Bea Welch, her husband of over 30 years. They had 2 sons together, Matthew, born in 1994, and Luke, born in 1997. Both of her sons worked on Schitt's Creek in various capacities, showing that Catherine had raised them to appreciate and understand the entertainment industry. In 2017, Catherine was appointed to the Order of Canada, one of the highest honors a Canadian citizen can receive. This recognition acknowledged not just her contributions to entertainment, but her importance to Canadian culture. In 2018, she was invested as an officer of the Order of Canada. In 2021, she was named honorary mayor of Brentwood, Los Angeles, and received the Governor General's Performing Arts Award for Lifetime Artistic Achievement. That same year, she was selected as Forbes 50 over 50, a recognition that she was thriving and continuing to make important contributions to her field. Despite being in her late 60s, in 2023, at the 11th Canadian Screen Awards, she received the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television's Icon Award. In 2020, she received the Dorian Award for Timeless Star. In 2018, she received the Youth Ireland Alliance, this Oscar Wilde Award, in recognition of her Irish heritage and her contributions to culture. In 2020, she received the Carnegie Corporation of New York's Great Immigrants Award, acknowledging that while she was a Canadian native, she had become an American citizen and had contributed significantly to American culture. These honors, these recognitions, these awards paint a picture of a woman who is deeply respected, deeply valued, and deeply loved by the entertainment industry and by audiences worldwide. Catherine had a rare medical condition called situs inversus with dextrocardia, meaning her heart and internal organs were positioned in a mirror image reversal of normal anatomy. This is an extremely rare condition. It occurs in fewer than 1 in 10,000 people. Most people with the condition have no medical symptoms or complications. Catherine lived a full, active life with this condition, and most people never knew she had it. She was a singer and songwriter. She sang on the Grammy-nominated A Mighty Wind album. She wrote songs and sang on John Candy's 1985 television special Last Polka. She was part of the Northern Lights group that sang Tears Are Not Enough, a benefit song for African famine relief. In interviews, Catherine often spoke about her faith. She described herself as pretty much a good Catholic girl at heart. She believed in family and loyalty and the importance of personal relationships. These values shaped her as a person and as a performer. Chapter 12. The People Who Loved Her. Macaulay Culkin, who starred as her son in Home Alone, revealed in 2014 that he still called her Mom, years after filming the movie. That single fact encapsulates everything about Catherine O'Hara. She created relationships with people that transcended the professional realm. She was genuinely maternal, genuinely kind, genuinely interested in the people around her. One of the most poignant facts about Catherine's life is that John Candy, her longtime friend and SCTV castmate, passed away on her 40th birthday in 1994. Catherine gave a tearful eulogy at his funeral. This moment, a colleague and friend dying too young, is something that shapes a person. It reminds you of mortality, of the preciousness of time, of the importance of cherishing the people in your life. When Schitt's Creek ended in 2020, the cast and crew were devastated. For 5 years, they had spent time together, creating something special. Many of them spoke about how Catherine had been a stabilizing, loving presence on set. Eugene Levy spoke about his lifelong collaboration with Catherine with gratitude and affection. Daniel Levy spoke about working with Catherine and how important she had been to him. In recent years, as Catherine's health declined, people in the entertainment industry made a point of acknowledging her importance and her influence. She was featured in retrospectives, given Lifetime Achievement Awards, celebrated for her contributions. The world was preparing to say thank you and goodbye. Chapter 13. The Passing and the Tributes. When it was announced that Catherine had passed away on January 30th, 2026, the outpouring of grief was immediate and profound. Social media was flooded with tributes from fellow actors, directors, writers, and producers. Macaulay Culkin posted about how his on-screen mother had been a genuine maternal figure in his life. Eugene Levy spoke about losing a friend and a collaborator. Daniel Levy spoke about working with Catherine on Schitt's Creek and how important she had been to him. Daniel Levy perhaps said it best. Catherine had a generosity of spirit that was remarkable. She cared genuinely about the people around her. She wanted everyone to do well. She was collaborative, supportive, and kind. She lifted people up rather than tearing them down. She was secure enough in her own talent that she didn't need to diminish others. This is the Catherine O'Hara that the people who worked with her will remember. Not just the brilliant performer, but the wonderful human being. A woman who understood that the real work of show business isn't about becoming famous. It is about creating art alongside people you care about. Chapter 14. The Legacy Impact on Comedy. Catherine O'Hara's career spanned more than 50 years. The films and television shows she appeared in grossed more than $4.3 billion worldwide. She won countless awards, 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe Award, multiple Screen Actors Guild Awards, multiple Canadian Screen Awards, a Genie Award, and numerous other recognitions from critics groups and film festivals. But these statistics don't capture what made Catherine O'Hara truly special. Catherine's impact on comedy was immense. She was part of the SCTV generation that proved that Canadian comedy could compete with American comedy. She was part of a cohort that included Eugene Levy, Martin Short, and John Candy, all of whom became major stars. But while her male counterparts often got leading roles, Catherine excelled in supporting roles. She understood that the strongest actors are the ones who don't need to be the center of attention. She was happy to share the stage, to lift up her castmates, to serve the material. Catherine was a mentor and an inspiration to a generation of female comedians and actresses. In a 2006 interview with the New York Post, she recalled a particularly offensive moment in her early career. A writer at a Toronto newspaper had written an article asking why women aren't funny. Some of the male cast members at SCTV pinned the article on the wall. Every time she or Andrea Martin would give an idea, they'd point to the article and make snide remarks. Rather than being crushed by this sexism, Catherine was energized by the knowledge that younger generations of women were interested in funny women, and she committed to supporting them. She was proof that women could be just as funny as men, just as intelligent, just as talented. Catherine's approach to comedy was always rooted in character and truth. She wasn't interested in broad physical comedy or in making jokes at other people's expense. She was interested in understanding her characters and finding the humanity in them and playing them with sincerity even when they were ridiculous. This approach to character work has influenced countless actors and actresses. When you watch a modern comedy and see a supporting character played with depth and complexity, the DNA of Catherine's approach is likely somewhere in that performance. Catherine also proved that actresses didn't have to be leading ladies to have meaningful, sustaining careers. She demonstrated that there was tremendous creative satisfaction and professional success to be found in supporting roles, in collaborative work, and being part of an ensemble. This is a lesson that the entertainment industry desperately needs to learn, and it's one that Catherine lived and modeled throughout her entire career. Chapter 15. The Second Act, Proving It's Never Too Late. Her work on Schitt's Creek proved that it was never too late to have a career renaissance, that you didn't have to retire when you reached a certain age, that a great role could find you if you were willing to take risks. She was 60 years old when Schitt's Creek began, and it became the defining role of her career. How many people get a second act like that? How many people get to play their greatest character after they've supposedly already had their career? Catherine inspired people not just through her performances, but through her choices. The choice to leave SCTV at the height of her success to pursue acting. The choice to take on diverse roles across genres. The choice to do independent films and prestige television. The choice to prioritize her family and personal life over the relentless grind of show business. The choice to move to a small Canadian town to play Moira Rose, even though she was already an established star. These choices said something important, that an artist should follow their instincts, take risks, and refuse to be pigeonholed. Catherine demonstrated these principles throughout her entire career. Chapter 16. The Quiet Genius, Understanding Her Artistry. Catherine O'Hara's career was built on a particular kind of genius. It wasn't the flashy genius of a performer who needs to be the center of attention. It wasn't the revolutionary genius of someone who invented a new form or broke all the rules. It was the quiet genius of an artist who understood her craft deeply, who was committed to truth and performance, who understood that comedy and drama are not opposites but two sides of the same coin. She was a genius of observation. She could see a person, a mannerism, a way of speaking, a particular kind of vanity or insecurity, and translate that into performance with incredible accuracy. This is what made her impersonation so devastating and so compassionate. She didn't mock people. She recognized them. She saw them clearly and reflected them back to the audience with both humor and kindness. She was a genius of collaboration. She worked with the same people repeatedly: Eugene Levy, Christopher Guest, Tim Burton. These weren't coincidences. These were artists who had found in Catherine a collaborator who elevated their work, who understood their vision, who brought intelligence and warmth to everything she touched. She was a genius of commitment. She played every role, no matter how small, with absolute dedication. There's no throwaway performance in Catherine O'Hara's filmography. Every character she played was fully realized, every moment was purposeful. She understood that in film and television, a supporting character can make or break a story. And perhaps most importantly, she was a genius of empathy. She could find the human being inside even the most ridiculous character. She could make you laugh at someone while simultaneously making you feel for them. This is perhaps the rarest gift in comedy, to be able to laugh and cry at the same moment, to be entertained and moved simultaneously. Catherine O'Hara was never a movie star in the traditional sense. She was never the ingenue on the poster. She was never the leading lady dominating the promotional materials. But she was something more valuable. She was an artist. She was a craftsperson who understood her medium deeply, who made conscious choices about her career, who prioritized quality and integrity over fame and fortune. Chapter 17. The Lesson, What Catherine Taught US. She proved that you don't need to be the star to have an impact. You don't need to be the main character to be unforgettable. You don't need to be the focus of attention to change the landscape of entertainment. In a world that often rewards loudness, visibility, and self-promotion, Catherine O'Hara succeeded through subtlety, intelligence, and genuine talent. She was a quiet genius. And the entertainment industry and the world will be a quieter, less joyful place without her. The lesson Catherine's career teaches us is profound. It tells us that success doesn't require constant visibility. It tells us that the most powerful performances are often the quietest ones. It tells us that aging in an industry that worships youth is a tragedy if you continue to seek out interesting work. It tells us that a life well lived is more important than a life lived in the spotlight. Catherine showed us that you can have it all: an extraordinary career, a strong marriage, devoted children, loyal friendships, critical acclaim by being strategic about your choices, by prioritizing what matters, by refusing to compromise your values for momentary success. Chapter 18. The Final Curtain, Remembrance. Catherine Ann O'Hara lived from March 4th, 1954 to January 30th, 2026. In those 71 years, she created some of the most memorable characters in the history of film and television. She made people laugh. She made people cry. She made people think about what it means to be human, to be vulnerable, to pretend and yet be honest at the same time. She was a wife, a mother, a friend, a mentor, and an artist. She was Irish Canadian, an American citizen, a global entertainer. She was a legend in the entertainment industry, and she was also just Catherine kind, funny, genuine, and real. She appeared in blockbuster films that grossed billions of dollars. She appeared in independent films that changed the landscape of comedy. She performed in television shows that became cultural touchstones. She gave voice to beloved animated characters. She wrote sketches that made people laugh until they couldn't breathe. She sang songs that moved people to tears. But beyond the work, beyond the roles, beyond the accolades, Catherine was a human being who treated people with kindness and respect. She was someone who showed up every day ready to do the work, ready to collaborate, ready to serve the story. She was someone who understood that the greatest gift an artist can give is not just entertainment, but connection, the connection that happens when an audience member sees themselves reflected on screen and feels, for just a moment, less alone. Chapter 19, The Closing. Hollywood will miss her. Hollywood will indeed miss her. But more importantly, the world will miss her. Because Catherine O'Hara did what the greatest artists do. She held up a mirror to humanity and helped us see ourselves with more compassion, more humor, and more understanding. She gave us characters we'll never forget. She gave us performances that will endure for generations. She gave us the gift of her artistry, her intelligence, her warmth, and her grace. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the characters, the laughter, the tears, and inspiration. Thank you for showing us that it's never too late for a second act. Thank you for proving that supporting roles can be just as important as leading roles. Thank you for being kind to people behind the scenes. Thank you for taking your craft seriously. Thank you for being a mentor to younger performers. Thank you for being genuinely funny while also being genuinely human. Your legacy will endure, and your work will continue to bring joy to generations to come. You were truly one of a kind of quiet genius who changed the landscape of entertainment by simply being excellent at what you did and kind to the people you worked with. Rest well, Catherine. You've earned it.